Hey besties, welcome in. It's me, Sabrina, and it is time to end Herkyed 2.0. I don't know about you, but I basically have senioritis with Herkyed 2.0 because I am 100% invested in Herkyed 3.0 at this point in time. But up until like yesterday, I couldn't really see the light at the end of the tunnel. So let's just go through what I've got and we'll see where the cookies crumble, where the cards fall. Anyway, let's find out what happened in my Herkyed 2.0, okay? By the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about when I keep saying Herkyed, it is the hardest reading challenge you will ever do. And we are currently at the very end stage of round 2.0, and round 3.0 starts in like 2 weeks, something like that. So this is the official spreadsheet for round 2.0 that we've been working off of. And usually, if you're not new to my channel, you're used to seeing my very bright, vivid graphics that are in like pink and green. This is the actual one. I just like those colors, but we're gonna ignore those because those got so like, I don't even know what happened to them. I have a better idea for round 3.0. Let's look at the official bingo board. Hold on, let me see if I can make this just a little bit smaller so we can see all of it. Okay, there we go. So this is the official bingo board. And you can see that I actually got a bingo right here with award season, disability rep, even bigger rainbow, complete any readathon, and BIPOC. So congratulations to me because I've actually gotten a bingo and completed Herkyed round 2.0. However, me being the person that I am, I'm like, I really feel like I need a blackout bingo for this to count. So let's see if we can get anywhere close to that. If we can even get like another bingo out of this, let's just do that together and see exactly how far your girl's gonna get in Herkyed 2.0. So let's go to the first prompt, which is by the 100s. And would you look at that, I have completed it. So let's just go through these quickly. So for a book that is between 100 and 199 pages, I read Cutthroat. You can see down there at the bottom in my notes that it had 178 pages. For a book in the 200 range, I read You Want to Be on Top with 272 pages. For a book in the 300s, I read Well, Actually, with a total of 384 pages. I, for some reason, didn't write down how many pages were in the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, but trust, it was in the 400s. For the 500s, I read All the Colors of the Dark, which came in at 597 pages, and I'm very angry because if I could have counted that in the 600 page, it would have made my life a whole lot easier for the By the 100s challenge. For the 600s, I read Howling Dark at 688, and then for the 700 plus, I read Fairy Tale, which I believe was like either 730 or 732 pages. So for this one, I did it. So I have a little note up here at the top that says submitted ? So I have not officially submitted that one to the Herkyed crew, but I will do that after I film this video. So if we go back to our bingo board, you can see that I got that second bingo. So now I have an X out bingo. It also gave me a bingo across the top right here. So I immediately went from 1 to 3 bingos, and that is pretty awesome. But anyway, let's keep going. So after the By the 100s, we have the 24-hour readathon challenge. This one I did complete. I completed it quite early. You can see I already submitted it. And so for this one, I think I did it like the day after Thanksgiving. I ended up reading On the Calculation of Volume 1, I Hear You're Rich, This Is How You Lose the Time War, 3 Days, 9 Months, 27 Years, and Making Space. So that was a really good day. I do have a video of me doing that reading challenge. If you want to watch that, I'll link it up above for you. Speaking of up above, I didn't actually check out the background of my video before I started filming. Look at all these books right here that need to be shelved still. I'll get there. Anyway, so I read 5 books for a total of 497 pages. And I want to say that I read for 17 total hours before I was just like, girl, I have to go to sleep. For this particular 24-hour reading challenge, you just read like from when you wake up until the time you go to sleep. You don't carry it over however many hours are left. Had I been able to take a significant nap and then continue the next day, I would have finished one more book, but it's fine. I'm going to hide this sheet to get it out of my way. Then we did the subgenres of choice, which I completed and I've already submitted. And I chose fantasy subgenres. And so for that, I did a cozy fantasy, which was Legends and Lattes. I did a dystopian, which was The Prison Healer. I did a high or epic fantasy. I believe this one is classified as a epic fantasy. And so this one was Cry Voidbringer, which I absolutely freaking love this book. It's kind of too far away to see, but I went and tracked down a shelf trophy of that. Love. I also did a space opera, which was Howling Dark. And then I did Romantasy, which was The Traitor Queen. And then I used a horror fantasy, which was The Library at Helibor. This book was disgusting. The body horror in it. Oh, I completed that one and I actually really had a good time with this one. Like I genuinely enjoyed trying to fit things in here, and I went through a couple different iterations of it before I ended up on what I ended up on. Then we have the series Staircase, which I completed pretty early on, I want to say. So for solo, this one's very easy, just any standalone fantasy. And for that one, I did The Incandescent by Emily Tesh. And then for a duology, I ended up taking The Witches of Halstead. So for this one, I used a secret prompt prize. I want to say the prize for this one was you could use any book that was read in 2025 prior to the start of the challenge on July 6th. And so I had read Tonight I Burn in May, I believe. And then I read Tonight I Bleed at some point during the actual challenge. So I used my secret prompt prize in order to bring in Tonight I Burn. It saved me from having to read extra books. So then moving on to the series Staircase, I read, what is this one called? Oh, the Darkwood trilogy, which included White as Frost, Black as Night, and Red as Flame. And then for my 4 or more, or the quadrology as I've been calling it, I put in 4 of the Bridge Kingdom series book. I have completed the entire series, which is 6 books, but I counted books 1 through 4 for this. So we have The Bridge Kingdom, The Traitor Queen, The Inadequate Heir, and The Endless War for that one. For award season, now let me tell you guys something. This one pissed me off. Like, I was so upset about this one. So, and it's nobody's fault. It's nobody's fault. It just is what it is. But basically what happened was I was under the impression that if you were nominated for an award but did not win, that made you an entrant, right? Well, after a couple months into this challenge, Q did a video or something and had clarified that no, that does not make you an entrant. You have to be actually classified as an entrant in order to count as an entrant. So I had to rework everything that was going on here. And at that point, I think I had planned to read the Booker books, like the long list for entrants, the short list for semifinalists, and then finalist winner, whatever. That's what my plan was. Well, after that clarification came out, I was like, forget the whole thing. I'm gonna do whatever I want. So I went back through the books that I had already read, and I found some that were in different categories for a bunch of different awards, which you're allowed to do. I just wanted it to all be one award, but whatever. So here's what I ended up with. And I believe when I did this, I had already read all of these books. So I didn't even really put any effort into this one. I just grabbed books that I'd already read. So for the entrant category, I moved over to Kirkus. And so I believe that for that one, it's any book with a star review is an entrant. That's how they classify it on the Kirkus website. I pulled in The Names and Isola. In the semi-finalist category, I grabbed The Right Move, which was a Goodreads Choice Awards semi-finalist in 2023 for romance, as well as How to Sell a Haunted House, which was a Goodreads Choice semifinalist in the horror category in 2023. Moving over to finalist, I pulled in The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna, which was a finalist in Goodreads Choice in 2021 for historical fiction. Also, The God of the Woods. I do not understand. I did not think that book was good, but however, it was a finalist in the Libby Awards in 2025. Then for my winner, I pulled in The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones, and this one won the Bram Stoker Best Novel Award in 2020. Since this one made me so mad, maybe I should use this one as one of my mashup prompts in 3.0. Maybe. We'll see. Let's come back to this one because there's a whole thing with it. Let's come back to that one, okay? The last 10 years, and my head is in the way. So for this one, it's called The Last 10 Years. It's also known as the Decade Challenge. However, it's actually supposed to be 11 books. You had an option to go between 2015 to 2025 or 2016 to 2026. And I just said, why not both? So I went from 2015 to 2026, which is technically 12 books. For my 2015 book, I ended up with The Library at Mount Char. Terrible book, do not recommend. Actually, it wasn't terrible. It just was very nonsensical. Like, I don't get what was happening there. But anyway, for 2016, I read The Maker of Swans, which in comparison, I absolutely love this book hard, and I don't get what was going on there either. For 2017, I read Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows. In 2018, I put in The Bridge Kingdom. And just to note, like, if you are brand new to Herkyet and you're watching this video being like, girl, what is happening? Trying to get your bearings. You could use each book to count for a maximum of 2 prompts, unless you had like a reward or something like that you could use it for. So that's why you'll see some books recurring. For 2019, I put in Anxious People. For 2020, I read Beach Read. For 2021, I read 7 Days in June. For 2022, I put in Red as Flame. For 2023, I used How to Sell a Haunted House. For 2024, I read Very Bad Company. For 2025, I read The Names. And then over here, you can't see behind me. For 2026, I read A Killer Kind of Romance. Adaptations. Listen, this one gave me a heck of a time because I kind of like don't get it very well. I don't know. Some of these are easy to understand and some of them for me were like kind of difficult. However, in this prompt, you were able to either read the source material or digest the adaptation. You could do both for bonus points. For the first one, it is a modern retelling. My source material was The Great Gatsby, and then my modern retelling was Local Heavens, and I actually read both of those, so I got bonus points on that one. And you'll see what the bonus points mean in just a minute. For a musical adaptation, I used Wicked, and I ended up using a secret prompt reward to pull in the book Wicked, which I read in January of 2025. So I used that same secret prompt from before. I believe it let me pull in 6 books that I had read prior to the start of the challenge. So I used another one of those because I wanted to watch the movie, but I just didn't have time. So I pulled that in, and it's fine. I got rewards for a reason. I'm going to use them. Then for a graphic novel or comic adaptation, I used Carmilla, which I read the graphic novel Carmilla. I think it's called Carmilla, the First Vampire. So I actually read that, and I read the source material. Then for a play adaptation, I had to double check this one like 6 times because I was like, no way they made a play out of this, but they did. So I read The Girl on the Train. I did not watch the play. I didn't have time for that either. For a TV show adaptation, I read Little Fires Everywhere, and I watched it on Hulu. For a web series, this one was hard for me because what is a web series? I had never heard of a web series before doing Herkyet, so whatever. But all of the community help pointed me towards the Assistant to the Villain web series from TikTok. Now, I only read the book because I deleted TikTok, so there's no way for me to watch that. But anyway, I read the book. So for animation, I read How to Train Your Dragon, and I definitely thought I was going to watch that movie, but again, I just was out of time to do that. It's fine. You only have to do one or the other. And then lastly, for a movie, same thing. I read The People We Hate at the Wedding, which is a book that I have had on my shelf since the day it was published and never read it, which I think it was published in like 2017, something like that. And I never read it. However, I read it. I regret it, but I didn't watch the movie, which is available on Amazon Prime if you're interested. This one, I did it. I have not submitted yet, but let's go ahead and click that. Move. That's a very inconvenient place for my face. Moving on to the disability challenge. I used White as Frost because our main character has finger dismemberment. I think she's missing her, oh, that's right, her pinky got cut off by her mother. I used 7 Days in June because our main character has chronic migraines. And let me tell you, when I read this book, I was in the throes of my first ever very chronic migraine. It was miserable, and having to read about it in the book was something else. Then I used All the Colors of the Dark, and oh gosh, how do you say this? The main character has anophthalmia, which means that he was born without one of his eyeballs. I did not know that was going to happen going into this book. So it was a pleasant surprise to be able to use this book as part of this challenge. Then I use coup de grace because that main character has depression and you really are going through it with them. Okay. I also used When the Tides Held the Moon because the main character here has asthma. So then there's the translation challenge, and I read On the Calculation of Volume back in my 24-hour reading challenge. That one was translated from Danish. I read Strange Pictures, which was translated from Japanese. I read My Husband, which was translated from French. And I read The Old Man Who Read Love Stories, which was translated from Spanish. Now pay attention because that's the first time you're going to see that book in this challenge. I used this one a number of times. And I read Anxious People, which was translated from Swedish. I think the board's going to start filling up. So I have not submitted that one yet. And the reason why is because Strange Pictures, My Husband, and The Old Man Who Read Love Stories, I read all of those last month. Moving on to Around the World. So I used Cutthroat for North America. I used The Old Man Who Read Love Stories for South America. That's the second time that book is in there. I used The Mercies for Europe. Oops, I skipped over this one. For Africa, I used Skin of the Sea. Then for Asia, I used Water Moon. For Australia, I used The Prison Healer. This is the only one where it is the author who's from the place, not the book taking place in the place. Honestly, it just fit at the time that I needed it to fit. And then I also did the bonus prompt, which is to read a book about or set in Antarctica, which was Wild Dark Shore. I did it. All the ones that I'm checking off right now being like, oh, I did it, is because I read that in the last month. Moving on to the Even Bigger Rainbow Challenge. This one was crazy. So in this one, you do not have to use the version of the cover that you actually read. You can use any version of the cover of the book that you read. So I kind of played with that a little bit in here. But for the first one, for red, I read The Mercies. For orange, I used the original cover of The Traitor Queen. You'll see on the other sheets, The Traitor Queen is a different cover version. It's the newer cover version. This is the original one. For yellow, I used Everything is Tuberculosis. For green, I used The Bewitching. For teal, I used Isola. For this one, I put it into a online thingy that determines what percentage of the cover is a certain color. And this one came back at 52% teal. So it counts because you only have to have 50% or more. For light blue, I used Overruled. I genuinely thought this was purple. However, Q did a video where she talked about this one and she said definitively that this is light blue. So are we going to count it as light blue then? Who am I to argue? For blue, I used I Think I Was Murdered. For purple, I used Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows. This one, again, is one that I put into the color match simulator situation. What is that? I don't know what that thing is called. But I used the website to determine that it was more than 50% purple. For pink, I used Main Characters. For black, I used The Unbound. For white, I used Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. She is not. For silver or gold, I use the Society of Unknowable Objects. And then for 7+ colors, I use With a Vengeance. And there are a ton of colors that are represented in this book cover. They're just kind of small. For spooky creatures, I had a video for this one too. This one was such a fun one to do because I kind of read a bunch of them all at once. For vampire, I used Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. For shifter, I used Blood Moon, which had vampires and werewolves in it. For magic user, I used A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping because it features a witch. For fae folk, I used A Fae in Finance. For spirit, I use The Unbound because it features archived persons, which are essentially like the ghost of you that goes into an archive and kind of just like is there. And then for merfolk, I use Skin of the Sea. It features the Mamiwata, which is a African version of a mermaid. And then for zombies, I use Dating After the End of the World. And for other creature, I used Our Infinite Fates because it features the devil. Let's go on to Become the Avatar. So for this one, you could do either a book with the avatar on the cover or a book with the avatar in the title. You could choose to do all 8 of those for bonus points. And I did. I originally did the cover image ones, and then I came back and I did the word title ones. So for water, I did the note for the cover image, which features a pool, and I used Water Moon for water in the title. For earth, I used the God of the Woods. All those trees look very earthy to me. And then the one with the word in the title, it's called It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth. For fire, I used Blood over Brighthaven. We got fire right here in the middle there. And then for the word in the title, I used The Night Ends with Fire. And then for air, I used the four winds. So this one, you can see that the wheat stalks are blowing in the wind. And then for a word in the title, I used Air Awakens, which was very, very good. So for this one, I did it. I just need to submit it. For new releases, and oh, I forgot to fill this one in. Hold on, y'all. I need to fill this one in. Let's insert an image. Do not generate anything. I have the image somewhere. There we go. Okay, so for my new releases, we're going to do this in kind of a weird order. So we started the challenge in July, in which I read Overruled. Then in August, I read, well, actually, in September, I read The First Witch of Boston. In October, I read Dating After the End of the World. In November, I read Fallen City. It was so good. In December, I read An Arcane Inheritance. And then we come over to January. So in January, I read The Redo List. In February, I read The Determined. In March, I read Once and Again. In April, I read The Infinite Sadness of Small Appliances, which I loved also. And in May, I read Ignore All Previous Instructions, which was so freaking good you don't even understand. And in June, I read You Won't Forget Me. These last three were so freaking good. June, May, April, January, November, and August were just top freaking notch. Like, I loved all of them, okay? So I did that one because I just very recently finished You Won't Forget Me. So then we have the readathon challenge. Now I did this one. I did a readathon called Clear Your Shit. And for this one, there are a number of prompts you have to read for, and I did all of them. Let me just rapid fire these. Most recently added to your TBR, I read Fallen City. A children's or a middle grade book or a book with one child in it, I read Cry Voidbringer. For a potentially intimidating or scary character, I read Terror at the Gates. For a book where someone goes on a journey, I doubled up. In this one, you could double up, so I used Cry Voidbringer. A book that starts with T, The People We Hate at the Wedding. For a free space, I read All Systems Red. For a mini boss, so it was a book that does not fit onto your shelves, I read 3 Days, 9 Months, and 27 Years because it's an audiobook. For a book with magical elements in it, I read The Knight and the Moth. For a book with gold on the cover, I read Fallen City. For a book you keep putting off, I read I, Medusa. For a book that was set in another time, I read A Visit to the Husband Archive. For a book you keep forgetting you have, I read I Hear You're Rich. For a side quest of a sapphic book, I read Carmilla, the First Vampire. For picking a book at random from a selection of 5, I ended up with Murder at Holly House. For a book with a blue cover, I read The People We Hate at the Wedding. For a book that has an ugly cover, I read I Hear You're Rich. For a book with a strange animal or pet, it was Murder at Holly House. For a free space, there was The Endless War. For Mini Boss Strength, which was a book that someone recommended to me, it was Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. For a book set in another world, it was I, Medusa. For a book you think a narrator of this particular challenge would like, I chose Terror at the Gates. For a book that would not fit into any other prompt on this challenge, I used To Bargain with Mortals. And for a book that I got for another readathon, I read For a Limited Time Only. For a book outside of my comfort zone, it was Carmilla, the First Vampire because it was a graphic novel. And then a book published in your birth month was The Knight and the Moth. And then the last free space, it was Tonight I Bleed. The last boss battle was a weapons one, which was a book with odd number of pages. I read In a Holidays. And that was it for that, friends. That was a lot of books I had to read for that readathon, but I did it. For animals, books that feature different types of animals. Oh, I have a little note to myself there. Cute. For a house pet, I pulled in Black as Night. They have a cat in that one. For exotic animals, I pulled in Murder at Holly House because it features a crow. And then for a farm animal, I used A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. We used the zombie chicken because it exists on a farm. Not that a zombie chicken is a real thing, but if it was a real chicken, which it was before it became a zombie, it would be on a farm. So you feel me on that? Okay. For wild animals, I used Wild Dark Shore and the seals that were featured heavily in it. And then for zoo animals, I used the library at Mount Char because it features a lion. On to the queer alphabet. So for this one, I use Very Bad Company for gay. I used Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil for lesbian. I plugged in The Incandescent for bisexual. I used Coup de Grace for transgender. I used The Left Hand of Darkness for intersex. And let me just say, this is one of the books that I specifically read just for Herkyed because I would not have picked it up otherwise. And I am so glad that I did because this was incredible. And now I am like an Ursula K. Le Guin fan. Like okay, anyway. For asexual, I used A House Between Sea and Sky. And that one was, I read it because it was an arc that I got. Had no idea that it featured an asexual character. So that was a pleasant surprise. For polyamory, I read A Dowry of Blood. For I was trying to remember, does this one have non-binary or agent? This one has non-binary. So for non-binary, I read The Library at Helibor. And then for gender fluid, I read Our Infinite Fates. In the BIPOC challenge. Now, I actually read so many BIPOC books, and these are just the ones that I was able to squeeze into here where they didn't have a second book that they were already counting for. So for Chinese, I read The Note by Alifair Burke. For Egyptian, I read One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This by Omar El Akkad. I've talked about him so much on this channel. This book was life-changing for me. For Ecuadorian, I read The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina by Zoraida Cordova. For Colombian, I read Summer in the City. I had no idea that Alex Astor was Colombian and very proud of it. But I went to her Instagram and girl, she was going off about it. And I was like, yes, okay, let's plug you in then, bestie. For Puerto Rican, I actually read 2 Puerto Rican ones, and that was The Bleeding Woods by Brittany Amara and then What Happened to Ruthie Ramirez by Claire Jimenez. For Indigenous, I pulled in The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. And then for Mexican, I pulled in The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno Garcia. For Filipino, we have Local Heavens by K.M. Fajardo. I think that's how you say that. I'm pretty sure. And then for Lebanese, I pulled in This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El Motar. For Challenge Yourself, I have one more where I have not inserted the photo yet. It was just this one book, actually. So let's go ahead and insert that. For the Challenge Yourself prompt, you were assigned to create your own challenge that had something to do with bookish things. And so what I challenged myself to do was to post one Instagram book review per month of an arc that I was reading. Now, it's something that I should be doing anyway, but it's something that before this challenge, I was kind of slacking on. So we started in July. Of course, that's when the challenge started. So in July, I read and posted about the Book of Lost Hours. In August, there was A House Between Sea and Sky. In September, there was The Bleeding Woods. In October, there was A Fae in Finance. In November, there was I, Medusa. In December, it was To Bargain with Mortals. In January, it was The Redo List. In February, I did Queen of Faces. In March, it was The Determined. In April, it was The Infinite Sadness of Small Appliances. In May, it was Ignore All Previous Instructions. In June, it was You Won't Forget Me. You can see some of these overlapped a lot with my new releases because they were arcs and I was reading them right before they came out. So that just kind of worked out for me. I have completed this one also. Onto the nonfiction challenge. This one was interesting. I would say I don't really read nonfiction. I am finding that is rapidly changing for me. I read One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This, which is a political autobiography. I read You Want to Be on Top, which was a memoir. I read Everything is Tuberculosis, which is a medical narrative. And some of these, I really had to look up, like, what are they? Because to me, a nonfiction is a nonfiction is a nonfiction. For an autobiography, I read Finding Me. And a just straight up plain biography, I read The Swans of Harlem. Q's, reviews, and recommendations. This one was a little bit tricky because Q be reviewing everything, okay? So it's almost a free-for-all. Q being the creator of Herkyed. So I plugged in When the Tides Held the Moon for a mini review. Now, sometimes she cross posts her reviews to different things. So I think that technically this was not originally a mini review, but that's how I saw it. And I didn't even know that it was not originally a mini review until somebody pointed it out. But anyway, I don't really care. I'm counting it, okay? Because that's how I saw it, and it exists in the mini review format. Then for a full reading vlog, she posted a full reading vlog of The Night and the Moth. And then Oh, wait, am I confusing When the Tides Held the Moon with Blood Over Brighthaven? Okay, what I said about When the Tides is actually, I meant that for Blood Over Brighthaven. Blood Over Brighthaven is the one that I saw. I think I saw it on Instagram, but that's not where it originally is from. Okay, anyway, I just confused myself. This happened so long ago. Anyway, for this YouTube short, TikTok, or Instagram reel, I saw it on Instagram, and it was her review of Blood Over Brighthaven. And so for each of these, you're supposed to decide if you fully agree with what Q said, her review of the book, if you thought it was worse than what she said, or if you thought it was even better than what she said. And so for When the Tides, I said I fully agree because she absolutely raved about this book. For The Night in the Moss, she thought it was really, really good, and I fully agreed with that. And then for Blood Over Brighthaven, I put that it was even better than what Q said. I want to emphasize that Q said this book was phenomenal, incredible, outstanding, amazing. And I just thought it was like the best book ever. In fact, I named it my book of the year for 2025. So like, basically I agree with Q, but I was just trying to emphasize that I thought it was like the best book that has ever happened to me. So I said even better than what Q said, but just know that she loved it, okay? Now, really quickly, let's talk about the secret prompts. So every month, Q issued a secret prompt challenge, which if you read a book that fit her prompt, you can then get a prize. And so I had started kind of keeping up with it, you can see over here, but then I was like, if I'm not doing it, who cares? So like the one in July was read an entire book outside. And if you did that, you could replace one slot in any prompt with any book. So I did read Beach Read outside, and I have not used that. Earned but unused. And then in August, you could read a book with a punny title, which I read Maine Characters, which was Maine like the state. And for that one, you could win a free triple up on any book that was previously read. I earned that, and I used it on White as Frost. So you should have seen, or you will see, that I've used White as Frost 3 times. In, let's see, September, I didn't earn it. See, I was trying to keep up with everything, but then I just didn't. In October, you could read a book with the first and last name in the title, and you got 250 bonus points, which I added to the spreadsheet. For November, you had to do the Read What You Own challenge. And for that, there were 7 different prompts. And for each of the ones that you read, you could get one book's prize, and that was to pull in books that were read from January 1st through July 6th of 2025. I talked about that previously. I ended up reading 6 of those books instead of 7. And so I have a chart over here where I was keeping track of what I was using them on. So for those you had a classic that you've been putting off, I read The Great Gatsby. And then a book that was on your shelf that was unread, it was Carmilla the First Vampire. And I used that to pull in the Tonight I Burn in the series Staircase. And then in a recently purchased book, it was Fallen City. And I used that to pull in Wicked into the adaptations. A book that's been on your shelf forever, it was The People We Hate at the Wedding. I used that to pull in Babel. And then a book that's been constantly recommended, I used All Systems Red, and I used this for In the Likely Event by Rebecca Yarros for Why in the ABC challenge. And then a book that I've been procrastinating on, it was I, Medusa. I have not used that one yet. And then the book that's next on my TBR was Terror at the Gates, and I have not used that one yet. So I actually have 2 that I can still use. Back over here for just 1 second. In December, I didn't complete that. In February, you had to read a book with the color in the title, and the color had to come from Joseph's Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And I could use one book for as many prompts as you want. And you will see that is how I pulled in The Old Man Who Read Love Stories. Then for June, you had to read a book with an author's last name is the first name. And for that, you would earn 2,123 points, which is the total number of points that Cordy herself has. And I did do this. I read The Summer Girlfriend by Christina Forrest, and I went to, someone posted a name checker website thing, and I went and I checked, and Forrest is an actual first name that tons and tons, like thousands and thousands and thousands of people have. So I did earn this, and we are gonna, I don't know what color this is supposed to be. It's supposed to be, that's not the book that I used it on, that's the book that I read. Girl, what are you doing? Okay, so that's what I did there. So now that we've seen that, let's go and go back through the ones that need to be updated. Let's start here with the TBR game challenge, right? Because this is the one where it just kind of got tricky. In this one, I don't even want to talk about it. I gave myself way more than I had to give myself, and it is what it is. I read most of these. I read The Maker of Swans, The Girl on the Train, Assistant to the Villain, How to Train Your Dragon, Black Owned, Atmosphere, Strange Pictures, My Husband, The Old Man Who Read Love Stories, Anxious People, The Night Ends with Fire, Air Awakens, Fairytale, and Yellowface. Now, I really only had to read 5 books for this, but I decided I'm just going to do a whole bunch and put in every single book category that I haven't read yet. Every single prompt that I haven't read for yet. I'm going to pull a book for this. Played myself. And now, because I played myself and because I was going above and beyond, I don't feel bad about what I'm about to do. We're about to use these points and these secret prompt rewards, and we're going to finish Herkyed, okay? Because as it stands right now, here's our bingo board, and we are missing Heritage Months and the TBR Game Challenge and Make a Quote and a Herkyed prompt, and then, oh, I forgot to mark Challenge Yourself. So we're missing 1, 2, 3, 4. We're about to clear these out. I think we're going to be able to do it. I think so. So with the 21, 23 points in there, I have 36, 45 points. I also have earned 77 rereads, 38 DNFs, 15 triple ups, and 7 short prompts. I have used 1 triple up. I used it on Anxious People. So let's start using these points. I should have used the DNF on Fairytale. At the time, I didn't realize that I had a DNF to use. I didn't realize I could DNF using points. So busted. But anyway, sorry, I'm just going to keep moving myself back and forth across the screen. So for Green Teeth, I think we should just go ahead and short a prompt. I mean, I'm not going to read that book. Now for An Ember in the Ashes. We're also going to short a prompt here. The Elsewhere Express is going to get shorted. I mean, what else are these points for, you guys? And Q did say that we could use her points to do whatever the heck we wanted to do. And then for the Undercutting of Rosie and Adam, I'm also going to short that one. So if we come up here, we can put in what we've done. And so I've got 1, 2, 3. I have 4 that are shorted. That brings us down to 1,645 points still. So by doing that, we can say that we've completed this technically. And again, I played myself. In order to play this game, I actually only needed to pick 5 books. And I've already read well and beyond 5 books. These are just extras that I put on here. And I mean, I'm not going to read them. It is what it is. I'm using my points. Fight me. You can also see on this one that The Old Man Who Read Love Stories appears here. And so I believe I used it 4 times. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and click that as being done. And we're going to move on down the board. Okay, for Heritage Month, because it had come up in the TBR game, I was going to read An Ember in the Ashes for Arab Heritage. However, what I decided to do was to use one of my secret prompts for here for bringing in a book that I read previously, and we're gonna go ahead and plug in The River Has Roots. Let's put that in there. Yay! So what I used for my Heritage Months for Disability Pride, I used White as Frost. Again, she was missing a limb, or she was missing a finger. For Hispanic Heritage, I plugged in The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina. And that one I actually got bonus points because I read it during the month of. For Indigenous Heritage, I read that one during the month of, and I used Terror at the Gates, Scarlett St. Clair. And then for Black History, I got bonus points on that one. I read Black Owned by Shar Adams. For Women's History, I read Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. For Arab Heritage, I just plugged that one in. For Jewish Heritage, I read The Book of Lost Hours. And then for AAPI Heritage, I plugged in Babel using my rewards. And then for LGBTQ plus Pride, I used Stag Dance. I did not enjoy that book, unfortunately, but it's okay. So now that one's complete. Now, for Make a Quote, this one where you had to make your own personal quote and you had to read books that had those in there. I have one left. That is The Girl from Greenwich Street. I did not have time to read that, friends. I do not have time to read that. So we're going to have to use some more points on this one. Do we have enough points? I think we do. Yeah, we have time. We have points. So we're going to plug in one more shorter prompt. Using them points up, friends. All right. let's go back. We're going to go ahead and insert the image there to just say that's what we were pretending we were we read. It's gonna be fine. It feels like cheating, but it's not. Really, it's not. So the other ones that I used here, the quote was from What Little I Read. This is published in the annals of an academic journal somewhere. Anyway, I used What Happened to Ruthie Ramirez for what. I used Little Fires Everywhere for little. I used I Think I Was Murdered for I. And then I used The Old Man Who Read Love Stories for read. For that one, I used a secret prompt bonus to count that. I think is this the third time it's popping up? So now we can call this one complete as well. For this one, your favorite Herkyd 1 prompt, I have the undercutting of Rosie. It's the only one I have left. So I used the A to Z challenge here. You could either use the title of the book or you could use the author's first or last initial. We have Summer in the City by Alex Astor, Blood Moon, Carmilla, A Dowry of Blood, An Encore of Roses, The First Witch of Boston, Society of Unknowable Objects, we use Gareth. Beach Read, we use Henry. The Inadequate Heir, Inadequate. A Fae in Finance. A Visit to the Husband Archive. This was Kellyanne Bradley, K. In a Holidays was Lauren from Christina Lauren. Making Space. The Measure, I actually used the N from Nikki Ehrlich. For main characters, we use Hannah's last name, Ornstein. Then we have Pen Pal. Then we have Queen of Faces. Then, very proud that I didn't have to search that one out. I naturally read that one. Then we have The Fighting Spirit by Rob Keeley. Then we have The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. Then we have The Right Move by Liz Tomforty. We do not have a book for the undercutting of Rosie and Adam for our U. So we're going to have to short a prompt, I think, is what we're going to have to do. Or actually, let's come over here. Let's use our secret challenge reward for replace one slot in a prompt with any book. And if we go back to our tracker, let's just find any book that only has one thing on it. Let's do Scarlet Yearnings. Let's insert that one and just call that one good. So let's go back here. Okay, I made a little note for myself down here for what I did. Yay! With that, we have completed everything, and I still have rewards left over. So, I mean, I like super won, right? If we come back over here to the bingo board, why is Challenge Yourself not blocked out? I did it. You know what? I think there might be a formatting issue here. So I'm just going to fill it in myself. Okay, you guys? Okay. Okay, I don't know why the formatting on this one is being weird, but I won. And I mean, it's all good. I blacked out the board. It's fine. It's gonna be fine. I blacked out the board. And Herkyd 2 is officially over. Okay? I think I should celebrate by buying some more books. Maybe I'll celebrate by shelving my books that are back here. I had a really, really good time doing this challenge. I will say that there are few books that I picked up specifically because I was doing Herkyd, which to me, like, that's incredible that I read this many books naturally, this diversely, because the point of Herkyd is to read diversely. And so for me to have read this many books on my own that were fitting all of these diverse categories, and I think I want to say I picked up maybe 4 books specifically for this. I know that I picked up The Left Hand of Darkness for Herkyd specifically. I know that I specifically picked up The Swans of Harlem, and there was a third one that I know that I picked up specific. Oh, The Old Man Who Read Love Stories. Those 3 I know I specifically and only picked up because of Herkyd. All the rest of these, I was able to fill in the prompts just based on what I was naturally reading. So for me, that's like really cool. Like, it's telling me that I am actually reading diversely. I would say that the one that I was most surprised was challenging was By the 100s. I did not think I was going to struggle to get this one done, but for some reason the 500 page books just like really gave me struggle, and then the 700 plus page books, honey, I was not doing that naturally on my own at all. Adaptations, I remain confused about this one. Web series kind of like just threw me for a loop. I was like, I don't know. And I don't like to read graphic novels, or I didn't like to read graphic. Carmilla was the other one that I picked up very specifically for this challenge because I wasn't planning on reading that, the graphic novel. So I am trying to get into being a graphic novel lover, but currently I would say that I really am not a graphic novel lover. I don't hate them, I'm just not a lover of them. For me, I find them a little bit too distracting. It is the reason why I cannot watch TV with subtitles on it, because all I will do is read the subtitles. I will never ever see what the movie is on the screen. So I know that most people love a subtitle situation. It is actually so distracting for me that I would rather not watch the TV or the movie. I'm just being honest. In terms of the Herkyed challenge itself, like one major takeaway for me was that I needed to be a little more organized and a little more thoughtful in how I was approaching it. If I didn't want to have like a panic moment towards the end, I did go into 2.0 with the idea being that I was going to just read what I wanted to read and see how it fit in. For 3.0, I wanted to do that, but then I got so excited for the prompts that came out that I decided to adjust my approach a little bit, and it's kind of based off of my experience in 2.0. So I think that reading for the specific prompt would make it a little more focused and a little less chaotic. I think that I want to continue what I'm doing, like by reading what I would naturally read. And so I'm challenging myself going into round 3 to read only books that I already own. And if it's not something that I own and I just absolutely need a specific prompt, a specific book to fit a prompt, then I'm going to get it from the library, because you can see how many books I have. They're not shelved because the shelves are tightly packed and it's going to take effort in order to put them on the shelves. So I just really need to read what I already own. And so I'm hoping to use that going forward as opposed to just randomly picking up books to read them. Some other things that I just figured out in terms of this, I'm happy that going forward, we're not going to do the points tracking anymore. So even though that came in super handy here at the end, and I love having that flexibility there, I do think it was a little bit of a ridiculous exercise, me tracking all these books to get in their point values so that I could maybe possibly use them later. And I wasn't originally planning on using them. I'm just using them now because I need to get out of this challenge and get ready for 3.0. I mean, all in all, I would say that I was most pleasantly surprised by the LGBTQ plus challenge, because like I said, I read all of those without trying to specifically read towards that challenge, except for one. That's incredible. So, I'm feeling myself now. I feel like I did a really good job on Herkyed, and I hope you guys have had fun hanging out with me this year. Like I said, I am making some changes to how I'm doing my Herkyed content for 3.0 to make it a little easier to follow, I think. Because for me, like, I just really want to be able to follow it in a linear fashion. Even though it's my own channel, like it's just something that I feel strongly about. I am just thrilled to pieces that I have finished the Herkyed 2.0. I never did 1.0, so I think in my head, whenever Qwerty stops putting out Herkyed challenges, at that point in time, I'm going to go back and I'm going to complete 1.0 so that I will get it all completed. This is the Herkyed stat page. I just kind of like went to this page just to kind of look and see what was on it. In total, I read 148 books for Herkyed. So like I said before, I read an average about 150 books per year. So there are actually more than this because I didn't log any of the June books in here, but it's okay. A total of 39,000 pages, 315 hours spent reading. I spent a total of $94. This, I only counted money for books that I specifically purchased for Herkyed. So apparently there were more than 3 or 4, because I know I didn't spend $100 on 4 books. That's crazy. My average rating was 3.93. Okay. My most read month was October. Your girl was at home on medical leave with literally nothing else to do in October. So she read like 18, 19 books, something like that. My most used category looks like it's contemporary romance. Okay. Oh, tied with fantasy romance. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mostly read hardcovers. That is actually surprising to me. I hate hardcover books, but that's crazy. Followed by audiobooks, and then paperback, and then ARCs. Or ebooks, I guess. Move, girl. Penguin is the publisher with the largest number of books that I read. And most of what I read was adult books. And then these are the authors. Who is this? Oh, Danielle L. Jensen. Yes, that's right. I read a whole 6-book series from her. Other than that, mostly we're topping out at 2, except Anthea Sharp. I read a trilogy from her, so there's 3 there. My 2-book authors, Colm Tobin, KX Song, Taylor Jenkins Reid, R.F. Kuang, S.T. Gibson, Grady Hendrix, Emily Henry, and V.E. Schwab. Okay, so that is an official wrap on Herkyed 2.0. So thank you for joining me. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that like button, hit the subscribe button so we don't lose track of each other. And, you know, leave a comment down below. What were your favorite things about Herkyed 2.0? Did you have any surprises? Was there anything within the challenge that was actually really, really challenging for you? I'm very curious if like we line up with each other, or if you're like, girl, that was so easy. Like, what are you talking about? Particularly with the adaptations challenge. Anyway, thanks for joining me, like I said, and I will see you all in the very next video.